Ms. Thomas? Mr. La Rochelle?
Here.
Dr. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Bennett?
Here.
Mr. Tiller?
Here.
Ms. Rose?
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the May 16, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Are there any comments or corrections?
Madam Chair, I have a correction.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Page 7, the last paragraph, second sentence of the paragraph. Mr. Hathaway said from the right-of-ways should be rights-of-way. Remove the apostrophe and the S and put the S behind the right. And then I believe it should be it apostrophe S later on in that sentence.
I have a couple more. On page 11, second paragraph, second line from the bottom, it says which is cost prohibited. I think that should probably be cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
And then there was one more. Oh, never mind. That was it.
Thank you, Mr. La Rochelle. Any other corrections, comments?
Madam Chair, I recommend to approve the minutes subject to the changes as outlined.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Mr. La Rochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Thomas? Ms. Rose?
Aye. Next, we'll have the citizen comment period. All right, we have 3 individuals signed up. First one is Lacey Reynolds. I'm sorry, Larry Reynolds. Excuse me.
Do you want me to state my name and address?
Yes, please.
Larry Reynolds, 3351 Mount Pleasant Road, Providence Forge. Just a short statement. For the past several years, there has been a monthly coordination meeting between the Economic Development Director and the New Kent Chamber of Commerce past president board member. These meetings have proven to be mutually beneficial. The past president changes annually, resulting in it taking several months to establish a new close working relationship because of some of the sensitive nature of the information. The board recognizes the need for permanency in these meetings and for establishing similar communications with other state and county government offices and officials, but not necessarily in monthly meetings. To that end, the Chamber Board added a new permanent position to the board, the Government Liaison Director. The responsibilities of this director are to monitor activities, attend meetings and hearings, collect information, and make a factual report to the board about those activities that might have an impact on member businesses. This person is appointed by the president and serves at the will of the board. I have been appointed by President Erica Johnson to fill this new directorship and look forward to attending certain planning commission meetings in the future when member businesses might be affected. The Chamber supports the recently revised Article 28 Commerce Corridor Overlay Regulations. These regulations are essentially the same as those proposed by the Chamber in the Chamber's Vision 2040 White Paper submitted to the county in May 2020 for the Rural Character Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. The next person is Elizabeth Greenfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the Commission. My name is Elizabeth Greenfield. I represent the Home Building Association of Richmond. Move this up. Okay, is that better? Okay, I'm Elizabeth Greenfield. I represent the Home Building Association of Richmond. The address is 400 North Ridge Road, Richmond 23229. I'm here tonight just to reiterate the comments I offered at your last meeting on the amendments to the provisions for open space and cluster subdivisions. A number of our members have concern with these amendments and its impact on future development in the county, specifically the ability to build and develop moderately priced housing. We would ask that you further consider these amendments as part of the comprehensive plan update as you take a broader look at the county and decide where you want to structure future growth and development. We understand the county's desire to protect its rural character, and we certainly want to be partners and work with you on that, particularly during the comprehensive plan process. So we appreciate the opportunity to offer comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Starr.
Good evening, Commission. Just wanted to actually follow up from the last comments that I gave at the last meeting. I wanted to let you know, number one, that my projects have been vested, so I can sleep again. So I'm thankful for that. And really the only two comments that I have for the proposed changes are I would just ask that you would consider maybe a compromise on the density calculation. And then also I think it's important if we're going to have a higher density and larger lot sizes that we do away with the requirement for a central water system since these are likely to be subdivisions that would be in very rural areas and larger lots. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the citizen comment period. There are no presentations on the agenda. So we'll move on to the unfinished business discussion on ordinance amendment OA 0322, ordinance amendment to amend provisions for open space cluster subdivisions.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. At your May meeting, I presented to you Resolution PC 1122, which was a proposed amendment to the subdivision ordinance and zoning ordinance as it relates to the open space cluster subdivision. As you are aware, this proposed amendment presents a significant change to how we currently do our cluster subdivisions. Briefly going through the change, currently you have to have 70 acres to do a cluster subdivision. 50% of that has to be placed in a conservation easement, a permanent conservation easement. And the calculation density, the number of lots that you can create, is based on the minimum lot size of the agricultural zoning district, which is currently 1.5 acres. But I'm sorry, prior to getting to that, you do have to back out your Ches Bay areas, your Chesapeake Bay resource protection areas have to be backed out from your total land area. And then the remainder is divided by the minimum lot size of 1.5 acres. The proposed amendment that you have before you would reduce the minimum lot size required to do a cluster subdivision to 50 acres. But it does change the minimum lot size for the A1 zoning classification from 1.5 to 10 acres. So therefore, your density calculation would be 1 lot per 10 acres. There's also a requirement that 80% of the property would have to be placed in a conservation easement. The entire purpose of the open space and cluster subdivision is to preserve open space and to cluster your lots together. And we're proposing to kind of ensure that that occurs by creating a maximum lot size for any new lot created of 2 acres. And again, 80% would have to be set aside in open space. At our last meeting, staff was asked to take a look at creating an overlay district and basically keeping the same standards, but kind of determining where cluster subdivisions can occur. I believe you all have a map in your packet. And this map shows a number of rings, and those rings are approximately a 3-mile radius around the village land use classifications in our comprehensive plan. How do we get to 3 miles? There is a requirement, and let me back up a little bit. Open space cluster subdivisions are required for localities that have experienced more than a 10% growth since the last census. So therefore, we are required to have this subdivision provision. Within the state code, it also says that 40% of your unimproved agricultural and residential land needs to be included in the open space cluster subdivision. So therefore, the 3-mile radiuses around the village was what we needed to include 40% of our unimproved agricultural and residential land to meet the state requirement for open space and cluster subdivisions. As you can see from the rings, it does dial down the areas in the county that would be permitted, but it still leaves a significant amount of areas in the county that would be allowed to do open space cluster subdivisions. Staff is recommending adoption or recommendation of the original resolution that was presented in May. We do not believe that the overlay district accomplishes the goals of the board. We don't believe that by imposing the proposed resolution that it will shut down development in the county. I think it will give the board of supervisors more control over the development and ensure that we grow in accordance with our future land use plan. Right now, by making essentially the entire county, at least 85% of the county, our current practice, by making that a by right development in our current practice, which means the board has no control, has no ability to negotiate design requirements for these types of development, it really hampers us from growing in accordance with our long use plan. So that is the purpose of what's been proposed. We understand that it will force developers to go through the rezoning route, but we think going through the rezoning route again will allow staff in our planning department to work in partnership with developers and ensure that we have better developments in the county and in locations in the county that we are planning for growth as well. If you decide to move forward with the overlay district that has been presented, The path forward would be to deny the resolution that you have before you with a recommendation to the board to look at the overlay districts. This will require another public hearing because it is substantially different from what you've conducted your public hearing from last month. Therefore, the board would have to adopt an initiating resolution and send this issue back to you for a new public hearing. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Rodney, you mentioned that doing the overlay districts would not accomplish the objectives of the comp plan and of the board. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Why won't it work?
Well, we don't believe it's consistent with our future land use plan and our comprehensive plan, which is the county's goal and map for future growth in the county. And if you overlay the future land use plan over the areas that we have drawn, definitely there are some inconsistencies there. So that's the reasoning behind that. That's the reasoning.
Rodney, I agreeing with you that I think that's going to be brought up in the comprehensive plan when that's taken into advisement. Stuff like this. I'm looking at the map and not seeing the ability to have cluster developments with this overlay up near Hopewell Road, which would be no reason why there wouldn't be any cluster development up there if they abide by these. And using an overlay, it's not necessarily where, we want that. But, so I understand what you're saying with that.
And we do understand that we are going through a comprehensive planning process. But we don't believe the best path forward is to continue as we are while we get through the comp plan process. Comp plan process is a 2-year process, and there's a lot that can happen within a 2-year period. We believe that the best path forward is to impose the new regulations, which would slow down cluster subdivisions. And as we get through the comp plan process, if we determine that there's changes needed at that point, then we can always go back and amend the cluster subdivision again.
Rodney, have we looked at the surrounding counties? Are some of them similar to what we're doing to change?
Well, not all counties are required to have this provision. Not all counties have a 10% or higher growth rate. But I can tell you, the closest county to us that has the 10% growth rate is Hanover. And they have a very similar ordinance to what's being proposed. In fact, their calculation of density is the exact same.
Madam Chair. Mr. Hathaway, now a general question. Are any residential construction types restricted when we do the cluster open development? So is it only single family residences or townhouses allowed, apartments, duplexes?
No, nothing is restricted because you can get to a 0 lot line development, which therefore you could utilize a townhome. We haven't had that thus far, but
You'd only be able to do what's allowed in the underlying zoning districts, so A1.
so yes, A1. Although, yes, because we only allow clusters in the A1. We don't allow it in residential, so it would have to be single family. Mm-hmm. That's true.
And I guess as a follow-up with the overlay concept, as far as those areas that are not covered in the overlay, and if we choose or do the 3 mile radius, which I am somewhat of a fan of, but those areas not included, which are even more rural areas of the county, the board still exercises greater control because they wouldn't have the by right ability to do cluster development. So they would have to rezone in that case, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Hathaway, like Mr. Davis, I'm somewhat fond of the overlay district. I think it should be a reminder to the board that the diagram that we have before us is a demonstration that the center of that radius could be any item, any location on that map, so long the total aggregate is 40% of unimproved lands, correct?
That's correct. We use village. I believe we discussed that
Yeah.
at our last meeting, but
Yeah.
you could use another. Yes.
So whether it's the center of current public infrastructure, water and sewer, or villages, or whatever whatever is ultimately decided, if we go this way, could be used as that radius point, or it could be 4 miles or whatever.
That's
But
correct.
I too, and like Mr. Davis, think what this does is limits the availability of lands to open space development, yet still meets the obligations to have open space development within the county.
This definitely is an option. Yes.
Madam Chair, just another comment too, and I know it's late to even ask, and I wouldn't, but it'd have been. I'm curious. I guess you would like to see an overlay of the county utility map to see where with the overlay, would these the open development or clusters be more closely located to existing utilities in the county versus not.
Sure.
Of course, then we wouldn't have we wouldn't have the small, again, for 8 lots or greater, little pinpoints of independent water systems that are obviously would be more difficult to maintain or even tie into if the village areas tend to have more utilities, then it's almost a natural progression or tie-ins. So.
That's one of it, and definitely we could provide that information to you. But that's also one of the reasons we chose villages to be the central point. Also in our comp plan, there is a utility service area map, which pretty much follows the village designations. But we could definitely provide that.
Rodney, you mentioned that although we're looking at the radius around the villages, that this was not consistent with the future growth map in the comp plan. So is there a way to have an overlay district based upon that mapping?
We couldn't get there. I mean, we definitely looked at that,
Okay.
but we couldn't get there and meet the 40% requirement. That was the kind of the hang up.
Madam Chair, I look at the overlay completely different. The overlay is where we're probably going to have utilities. We'll probably want residential areas. What you're promoting with this plan is the rest of the county. Mm-hmm. We don't want the growth to be in the rest of the county because according to the strategic plan, and I'm sure the comp plan is going to say we want to be rural, except for certain areas. And so the areas, like I said, out near Hopewell Road, out toward that's where we want to have some kind of structure with cluster developments because they want to stay rural. Mm-hmm. Around me in Patriots Landing, sorry, we're not rural anymore. Right. And if cluster development goes in there, it's going to fit in. But out in the rural areas, that's why you want to propose something like this. It's not the overlay districts, I don't think.
Yeah, a big part, the majority of our current comp plan is centered around retaining our rural character. That is the theme of our current comp plan. And how do we get there? We concentrate development in strategic locations to relieve the pressures for growth in areas of the county that we want to keep as rural. So our comp plan is totally about preserving rural lands in rural areas.
Mr. Hathaway, can you kind of quantify, or maybe Kelly can quantify, what kind of applications have we seen recently on development of agricultural lands, not including open space developments? What kind of numbers are we looking at? I would think that the vigor is in open space developments and not in this pure development of the agricultural land, correct? I would think that you would see more applications on open space development than you would see in the true sense of subdividing open space or agricultural land, correct?
You'd be surprised, Mr. Bennett. We've gotten quite a few just over the last couple of years for the by right large lot subdivisions in the rural areas, the 15 acres and the 25 acres. We got a pretty good combination of family and parent tract in as well, but the majority of the more densely developed subdivisions have been for the clusters. We can pull the numbers if you want to see them, but.
Well, I have a map of the clusters that have been approved today. And that is overlaid with the future land use designation. That was an item that was requested, right, last year. Today, on my calculations, there's been 10 approved cluster subdivisions, creating right around 500 new lots.
On roughly how many acres total?
I could figure that out, but I don't have that number with me
All
right
right.
now. Yeah.
Just a remark, it seems like the synergy is Bottoms Bridge and 106.
Which, yes, which is where we're seeing the majority of the growth right now in the county.
Which, and forgive me, which would imply that these would be great candidates for an overlay district. And I'll just end it there.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, by observation, the
Well-
majority do fall in what would be the overlay district. 2 clearly not, and 1's pretty close.
And that's what has occurred. What I do know, and we are talking to landowners, probably land totaling a couple thousand acres, that I'll tell you that would be within the overlay district, but definitely in the rural land use designation, which would drastically change the character of those areas.
As we have found with a lot of things we've done already on the Planning Commission, our responsibility is to look at this and see if that's a good use of land, and then we pass it on to the Board of Supervisors. Okay, so if we're ready for a motion, I can give a motion.
Any other discussion?
I guess just to add further comment, we haven't discussed really the density issues or concerns, which I've had some of that as well.
The other elephant in the room.
Yeah, the other elephant in the room, correct. I just as a comment, I would like to say that I think it's a great leap from 1.5 to 10 as far as creating the improved density. I think there is probably a compromise position in there. I'm kind of in favor more of a middle ground of possibly 5 acres as a density number, but that's not something, that's just my thoughts at this point.
I too am kind of looking for some type of middle ground, as you are, Mr. Davis. I know just looking at a parcel, 50 acres, 100 acres, and 150 acres, you would, if we dropped it to 5, we'd be on a 50 acre parcel, we'd be going from 5 to 10 lots, but they'd still have to meet the 80%. So 40 acres of that parcel would still be open space. That seems a little bit more reasonable, but still potentially in keeping with the overall requirement. Did you look at any other densities? I know, and I looked at some of the other counties, and I know Hanover, Prince William. So there's several other counties that have the 10 acres. I wasn't able to see what the percentage of open space that was required, whether it was upwards of towards 80% or whether it was more akin to what we originally have of the 50%.
Hanover is 80%. I'm not familiar with
Okay.
Prince William.
Okay.
But Hanover's 80.
If I'm correct, Rodney, if they don't want to abide by this, they need to zone it residential, correct?
Yeah.
So that's an easy, not an easy, but it's a step a builder needs to make to get around the whole cluster thing. He asked for rezoning to residential.
Which would allow you to go down to a 20,000 square foot lot.
Yeah, okay.
Madam Chair, and just as a comment, we don't have a minimum lot size in this proposal either. Is that correct? There's no minimum
And
lot size.
the cluster, there's no minimum lot size.
And I guess just for comparison's sake, I've been crunching numbers too, just and to make everything apples to apples in a way. If we took a 100-acre parcel, because some of the requirements are for the original is 75-acre minimum to trigger it. Take into account Mr. Starr's previous comments at the last meeting and his written comments, looking at the open space requirements being 50% for existing, and I believe Mr. Starr had indicated he'd prefer the 50% as well. And then with the densities, but by comparison, for a 100-acre parcel, the existing ordinance would allow for 67 lots. Do the math real quick. So
that's if there's no RPA on there, because remember
exactly.
the existing.
In that case, that is the exception, where this does not take into account RPA acreage. Right. And then again, taking into account what Mr. Starr had previously spoken about, I believe in his letter he was looking at 1.5 density, and I think his public comments were 2. and please correct me if I'm wrong, but, so we're looking at 50 lots allowed under that recommendation, at 5 acres density per lot. There'd be 20 lots allowed in a 100-acre parcel. And then the proposed ordinance will be 10 lots in a 100-acre. So it's quite a gap between proposed and what we currently have.
It is.
Again, only by comparison, trying to make everything look apples to apples.
Yes.
So again, I just will reiterate, I think my position is I would like to see somewhere in between that, as a compromise position, and whether we can do this in a form of a motion tonight to the board or can't do that, then that's certainly beyond me.
I mean, definitely you can do that in the form of a motion to recommend another density calculation. Yes.
This is my worry, excuse me, but this is my worry, is that what we're faced with is maybe some smaller open space developments that's going to have 10 lots, and then that's going to require a water system that it's not going to be a competitive water system with the water systems that we have now, that has a higher maintenance and repair value that can't be spread out among the lots equally to what the water systems are today.
We have standards for water systems.
I know that, but if you take 8 lots and they have a well system, there's the permitting and re-permitting, there's the maintenance, there's the flushing, all that kind of stuff that has to be done to maintain that water system, because it's going to be dedicated to the county.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes.
Which the per lot cost of that is higher than what most of us, if we're on public water, pay.
I
Yes.
believe that would be the builder's problem.
On construction, but not maintenance.
Right,
'Cause
which means he probably wouldn't do it. It's on our decision to make.
I understand
whether it's a profitable endeavor or not.
Yeah.
But if the one, if done, is still a cost to the county. If done, it's still a cost to the county.
As Rodney said, it needs to fulfill the standards of the county before it's turned over. Yes, before the site plan and everything would have to fulfill the county's requirements.
But
that once it's turned over, then the county would feel comfortable in inheriting that utility, correct?
But once that utility is turned over,
It
who
becomes
pays
the
for the
county's
maintenance
to maintain.
and the flushing and the repairs?
But we're saying that that's what we want them to have it ready to go.
Well, and actually, I would just like to add, and I see where you're going with this, and yes, definitely it becomes the county's responsibility to maintain. But with our utilities, we don't put any tax dollars into our utility system. Our utility system operates off of fees and user fees and rates that we collect. So ultimately, those on the system are paying for the maintenance of their utility system, and not just every single resident.
Understand that, but that means those people who pay into the system currently to help maintain and run the system, okay, when they have this isolated, standalone water system that has the same intensity of water quality requirements, repair, flushing, maintenance, and it's not being offset by the charges on that small subdivision, then the rest of the people who are on the water system in the county help supplement that.
That's true. But that can be said by any development that, when there's breaks or when there's breaks within the system, everybody essentially is covering that cost. But yes, you're right. That's an additional burden to the existing users on the system.
So the goal here is to try and slow down the growth and keep our county rural. Correct?
I'd be cautious about the slowdown part, because there's nothing wrong with growth. I mean, with growth comes definitely comes opportunities. But the goal really is to guide growth and to ensure that we're growing consistently in a consistent pattern with our comp plan.
With more control.
Yes, yes.
Because what we're talking about is an authorization to build by right.
Yes.
Where they don't have to go through a public hearing, and they don't have to go through the same level of scrutiny that other subdivisions would have to go through.
That's
Correct?
exactly right. They don't have to go through the same process that Farms in New Kent, Five Lakes, other subdivisions that have gone through the rezoning process have. And also, there's no opportunity to negotiate with the developer, proffers. And the whole purpose of proffers is for the developer to come to the table and address some of the impacts that their development is going to cause, albeit schools, increased public safety demands, infrastructure demands. There's no opportunity for the developer to participate in that with the current open space cluster subdivision.
Davis, can you regurgitate the numbers you just gave for the same 100-acre lot under the three scenarios, the number of lots that would be allowed?
I can give you a copy as well. So again, based on my calculations, unless corrected, for a 100-acre parcel, under the existing ordinance, there could be 67 lots developed. And again, based on what I feel Mr. Starr is recommending, could be 50 lots. From my perspective, if we consider a 5-acre density per lot, then it's 20 lots allowed, and then proposed ordinance is 10 lots allowed. And again, all factoring in the open space requirements, they do vary between what's existing to what's proposed, from 50 or 80%. And
So under the existing, there would be 67 lots and 50 acres of.
I didn't do the calculation. Under the current.
Yeah,
Take out 50 automatically. Divide the remainder by 1.5. Could be 33.
so I will stand corrected then, right?
So under the existing ordinance, it would be 33 lots in a perfect world.
Right.
33 lots, and there would be 50 acres of open space.
Yeah. Let me back up a little bit. And I don't have the code in front of me, so I'm going by memory. But the way that I remember the code is you take the total acreage, you back out RPA, then you do your density.
The density is calculated based on not the developable acres.
Total,
it's the total
RPA.
acres minus RPA on the existing.
Yeah.
So it would be 67 lots allowed minus the RPA.
Yeah.
So if you had a 150-acre lot and then 50 is in RPA, you could still put 67 homes or home lots on there.
Yes.
Yeah. Scared me. I checked my math. I don't know how many times.
Any other thoughts or discussion?
If I could.
Chairman, the only thing I would suggest is that to also remember that we can approve this, but if we feel at a later date that we need to go back and change this, we could do this under the direction of the Board of Supervisors, correct?
Yes. This could be changed at any time. And also remember, our whole goal was to first complete a strategic plan, then complete a comp plan, and then take a look at all of our development ordinances to make sure they align with the two plans. So we will be looking at this again once our comp plan is completed. But it is very difficult to go back and make changes after the homes are already built. If we can hit pause right now and then go back and make changes as needed, that puts us in a better position.
I want to use the M word, but I can't.
So it seems like we have a couple of options. The first option is to adopt Resolution PC 11-22. The next option is to adopt with recommended changes to this resolution, and we've talked about changing the density calculations and maybe the conservation requirement, which is fine. The next option is to deny this, and then if you'd like for the board to pursue the overlay, it would be deny this resolution with the recommendation to consider an overlay district.
Question. Rodney, your second option, if we go to 5, do we need another public hearing?
I don't believe
because tomorrow is the 100th day.
Right.
Okay. And I guess that's all the question.
Okay. Okay.
If we recommend 5, the board can still go back to 10, though, correct?
I think they could. Well, yes, they could, but I do think that they do want to hear your recommendations and thoughts. So, yes.
Any other thoughts on the 5? I mean, I think 5 is reasonable. I still 3. Oh, God. I'm still I like the 80% open space, that conservation, because that is really at the heart of why the cluster is set up the way it is. Yeah. It's preserving rural open space.
Yeah. On the other hand, though, I have an opinion that possibly that this should be left as presented, because you have to look at the infrastructure of where these clusters are going. Mm-hmm. There are no roads, and they're going to be impacted with a high amount of traffic in narrow areas. That would be my concern, is that we're developing way too fast before we're putting the horse behind the cart. The cars are coming first. So we really need to take that in consideration.
Rodney, I know, being a by right, they don't have to go through a public hearing. They still have to go through the site plan process.
They would have to submit a subdivision plat.
Is there any consideration of the road infrastructure at that point, or no?
I don't believe. The state gives us authority to impose anything that's required above the VDOT subdivision street requirements.
Not to make this overcomplicated, but we've already done that. Yeah. Similar to Ms. Rose, I'm proponent of the open space requirement of 80%. I think the 10 acre for the density calc is very extreme. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest 3 acre minimum, 3 acre for the density calc, knowing that there are additional requirements outlined in the planned or the proposed ordinance that I think will start to erode the number of lots that would actually occur. Remember, these are projected lots, these are not the actual lots, because the design dictates that. And the second thing is, I think a provision on having a minimum lot size will help erode that from that potential lot count down a little bit too. So I'm going to suggest 3, still honoring the 6 provisions of, I don't know where this is coming from, still honoring the 6 provisions of the requirements
Okay.
and having a minimum lot size.
Well, if I can ask a question, now having a minimal lot size, right now it's proposed to set a maximum.
Now, minimum lot size in the actual minimum lot size in the actual development. Right now, the proposed ordinance says you can have basically 0 lot lines.
Right.
Or, you can have a 0 square foot lot.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is maybe have a 20,000 square foot lot as a minimum lot size in the proposed development under the open space development. That's my suggestion.
One question is, as opposed to a maximum?
Now, you still have you still have a maximum, but you have a minimum too.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on that? Or are we ready to make a motion? To have someone make a motion?
Yeah, I can make a motion. I'm not a developer. I'm sitting on the planning commission. So in order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, I'm sorry.
First part you didn't have to hear anyway. In order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, general welfare, and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt resolution number PC 1122 to forward ordinance amendment OA 0322 to the New Kent Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. Period.
As written.
Correct.
Have a roll call, please?
All right. To adopt resolution number PC-11-22 and to forward OA-03-22 to the Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. Ms. Thomas? Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
Mr. Bennett?
No.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Mr. LaRochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Nay.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Rose?
Nay.
Passed.
Thank you. All right. We have come to the public hearing portion of the evening. We have a number of public hearings, and including 7 AFD applications. I will now turn it over to Ms. Butler.
Thank you. Good evening, excuse me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we have 9 public hearings before us. Each has been properly advertised for tonight's consideration. Let me take a moment to review the procedures that we will use for tonight's hearings. Each public hearing will be considered separately. Staff will give a brief overview of the hearing that is before us. The sponsor of the case will be given an opportunity to make a presentation. Commissioners will be given an opportunity to ask questions of the sponsors or staff for clarification purposes. I will then open the citizens' comment portion of the public hearing and receive your comments. Sign-up sheets are located on the desk by the front doors, and I ask the following. Come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, address your comments to the commission, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and when the timer sounds, please conclude your remarks. Please note that the commission members will not answer your questions during the citizens' comment period, but will certainly take those questions and comments into consideration during the deliberation period of the public hearing. And with that, I will open the first one. First public hearing, application ZM-03-22, Joseph Yates.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Just going to give a brief overview of the first public hearing tonight. Mr. Joseph Yates has requested the rezoning of approximately 0.153 acres of land from A1 to R1. The subject property is located at 7200 Pinehurst Drive in Five Lakes and is currently a split-zoned parcel that Mr. Yates recently recorded a boundary line adjustment for with Brookwood Golf Club. The purpose of the BLA and subsequent rezoning request is to allow the applicant to construct an accessory structure on the property, and the R1 zoning will allow this while meeting the required setbacks. The application was reviewed by all county reviewing agencies and VDOT, and none of these agencies had any comments. This rezoning will not contribute negatively to county services. Having the entire parcel zoned R1 will reduce confusion regarding property data, tax assessment, and zoning enforcement. Staff recommends approval of application ZM-03-22, and you have resolution before you PC-19-22. Mr. Yates is unable to be here tonight, but his daughter is here, and also Mr. Tiller wanted to say a few words on his behalf.
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Yates a couple weeks ago, and he wants to build a garage because he's converting the current garage at his home into a bedroom on the first floor. He was unable to attend tonight for health reasons, so I told him that I would be more than happy to speak on his behalf for this. And as, like Kelly said, if nothing else, it increases the value of that lot on top of that by making it a little bit larger. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to ask, and if not, Mr. Yates's daughter is here in the audience tonight too. So, but anyway, that's, excuse me. I told Mr. Yates that I would speak for him. So, thank you.
I'll go ahead and close application ZM-03-22, Joseph Yates, and turn it back over to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Any other questions or comments? If not, can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. In order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, general welfare, and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt resolution number PC-19-22 to forward application ZM-03-22 to the New Kent County Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. May I have a roll call?
Ms. Thomas? Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Mr. La Rochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Rose?
Aye.
And that passed.
Please proceed with the next
All
hearing.
right, thank you. I will now open the public hearing for application CUP-05-22, Kaden Interjects, New Kent LLC.
Okay, thank you again. I'm just going to give a brief overview of this CUP and then turn it over to the applicants. We also have a presentation when Kenny's ready. Representatives from Kaden Interjects and SPF Investments have applied for a conditional use permit to construct a 20-megawatt solar project on 2 parcels generally located south of Interstate 64 and west of Olivet Church Road. And there's a map in your packet for reference, and I know they'll go over that tonight. The solar facility is proposed to utilize approximately 200 acres of the 475-acre parcels. The parcels are zoned industrial and are designated as industrial in the comprehensive plan. Prior to submission of the CUP application, the applicants held several outreach meetings to notify the local property owners of the interest to construct the facility and receive any feedback regarding their proposal. The site's proposed to be accessed off of Olivet Church Road, and the applicant will work closely with VDOT and the county throughout the construction period to ensure that the public roads are properly maintained. This project will not cause any increased impacts to county services, and the applicant will facilitate training for emergency personnel relating to the specific hazards of the project. Buffers and screening will be required, and construction will be restricted to daylight hours. Decommissioning of the site to remove the project components and return the land to another permitted land use will be required at the end of the project life. The application was reviewed by all reviewing agencies as well as VDOT, and their comments can be found in your packet. As designed, the project will meet the newly adopted performance standards for solar generation facilities. And I'd like to introduce Dominika Sink with Energex and her team.
Good evening. My name is Dominika Sink. I'm permitting director at Energex. Thank you for this opportunity to allow us to present this project to you. So just a brief, I'm turning. Oh, thank you. So just a brief introduction to Energex. We're the project developer and the long-term project owner for this project. We're located in Arlington, Virginia. We currently have 8 operational solar projects in the Commonwealth, and 6 more projects are starting construction. We are the long-term partner for the communities and localities that we work in. As I mentioned, we're the long-term project owner, so we're in the communities for the duration of the project. We have a policy of Buy American, so we have partnered with a domestic solar panel manufacturer for solar. Their manufacturing facilities are based in Ohio, so all of our solar panels are procured from First Solar. The project overview, New Kent Solar is a 20 megawatt AC project. That's enough to power approximately 3,200 homes. As mentioned by Ms. Leduc, the area of the project will take approximately 200 acres. The parcels that we're proposing to locate the project on are more than 400 acres. So the rest of the acreage will be devoted to protection areas for wetlands, resource protection areas, setbacks, vegetative buffers, as well as pollinator plantings and local beehive production. The project will not generate any pollution, noise, or prolonged traffic. There will only be impacts during construction. This project also will not put strain on any county-provided services. Currently, there's no water or sewer access to the property. And the proposed lifespan of the project is approximately 35 years. After that time, the project will be decommissioned and returned to the original state, ready for other developments. So here briefly about the project location. We're proposing the project on 2 industrially zoned properties south of Interstate 64 and along Olivet Church Road. Just briefly about the project benefits that we hope to bring to New Kent County. We have partnered with the Chamber of Commerce. As mentioned, we're the long-term owner of the project. That means that we'll also supervise the construction activities. So we try to partner with local Chamber of Commerces in order to identify potential local contractors, hoping to hire as much local labor as possible. And as mentioned, after the project is decommissioned, it will be returned to a state that will allow it to be developed for other uses. So certain localities look at solar project as land banks, while there's limited disturbance. For 35 years, the project is producing power. After that time, it's decommissioned and ready for other uses. In addition, this project will also generate significant tax revenues, considering the current revenues with no other uses. So over 35 years, we're estimating $2.26 million generated to New Kent County. So here briefly, why we think this is the best use of this land. I might have skipped a slide. Apologies with the, sorry. Okay, I'm almost there, I promise. Can I click on it? Oh, there we go. So, sorry, back to the basics of the land. This property is located away from the interstate, so prolonged heavy traffic is not ideal for this property. On the eastern side of the property, there's a pretty extensive wetland, so any other development, if it had heavy traffic, industrial traffic for longer periods of time, that would require a major wetland crossing with major impact, major cost, and likely individual permit from Army Corps of Engineers. And as compared to the solar project, we will have traffic during construction, but after construction, there's very limited traffic. We monitor the project 24/7 remotely with sporadic visits to the site for vegetation maintenance. In addition, this project is located near economic opportunity parcels, other industrially zoned parcels. So bringing this project to this area, we hope to make it more attractive to other industrial users, potentially looking for renewable energy sources. As many major companies in Virginia, data centers or other employers are looking for other sources of energy. And as mentioned, this parcel does not have current sewer or water access. So again, it's not suitable for other types of development. Another thing that we hope to bring to this area, I know we've presented this project before to the Planning Commission. We've taken our time to make sure that we understood the interconnection requirements with the utility. We've worked with Dominion Energy to make sure that this project is beneficial. So over the last few months, we've had extensive conversations about what types of upgrades are needed to the substation, what types of upgrades are needed to the circuit coming from the Providence Forest substation to our project. So this project is actually bringing $6.5 million in upgrades to the electric infrastructure that we're paying for. So the substation, Providence Forge, as well as Lenexa and Chesterfield, are getting updates to their to the infrastructure within the substation. 4.6 miles of circuit will be upgraded. Out of that, 3.5 miles are single phase, so we're upgrading that to 3-phase, which helps the area where we're going to be prepared for any major load. And along the circuit which we're upgrading, it's going to increase the reliability of the electric infrastructure. Oftentimes when we try to cite a project, we want to make sure that we don't impact the communities nearby. So this project is really ideally located in terms of view sheds. We've been working with staff, making sure that we follow the new ordinance that was proposed. We've done extensive view shed analysis to make sure we understand where we can utilize existing vegetation, existing topography, such as berms, where we may need to add additional vegetation. So we have a few views for you. So here's a view along Olivet Church Road, which presents mature vegetation. We will, all around our project, we will maintain a 100-foot setback. So that's adjacent properties, adjacent roads. Within that setback, 75 feet of existing vegetation will be maintained for the duration of the project to protect the view sheds. Here we have a few more views. Again, along Olivet Church Road, there's berm and more existing topography that really screen this project really well. There's one area when we go towards I-64. As you can see in the photos, there's relatively sparse vegetation, so we're planning on planting vegetative buffer there to provide screening from the project. And here's some proposed plans, which we're happy to work with the county at site plan approval to determine which species will be most appropriate. What we usually propose is fast-growing evergreens with several different species incorporated into the vegetative buffer. And just a quick overview how this compares with the ordinance. So as mentioned, we prioritize minimizing the tree removal. So here we're exceeding the requirement for the screening buffer. Instead of 25 feet, we're proposing 75 feet. We're not located near any residential properties. There's a requirement for 150-foot setback from residentially zoned properties. We don't have any of those, but we are 240 feet away from the nearest house. Also, as we have been meeting with the county, trying to understand the project, we've carried out a cultural and historic resource analysis around the project. Olivet Church Road is a host to the Olivet Church Baptist Church, which is a historic resource. We've amended the plans for our project. We actually removed one parcel to the south to make sure that we're staying appropriately away from this resource. And so right now we're more than 1,800 feet away from the church. We're separated by a different parcel, which is also vegetated. As we're locating or proposing to locate this project in an industrial land, we try to understand the overall industrial land situation in the county. So currently there's approximately 2,800 acres of available undeveloped industrial land. So if this project is approved, that would mean that it's 7% of the industrially zoned land that will be used for this project. We also try to look forward, as this project is for 35 years, trying to understand how this impacts the locality's ability to host other industrial uses. We've commissioned industrial land absorption analysis to kind of see what were the growth patterns in the past, to try to extrapolate how this growth may look in the future. From there, we try to take the most aggressive growth period for the county. So kind of as we're going to look 35 years forward, we've assumed 115 acres with a 30% growth rate every year. So that would bring us to, if we're looking at 2060, when we would be decommissioning the project. Out of the 2,800 available acres, 712 acres will be used or needed for auto developments. So with this analysis, we just hope to show you that there is enough industrial land to accommodate both your plans for any industrial users, for big employers, as well as this project. And here briefly about the fiscal benefits. So under the current land use, if we're assuming no changes to tax rates, over 35 years, the project would, the land itself would generate $340,000 with the project. And there are two different tax mechanisms available to the county. Under the more favorable one, the project would generate over $2.2 million that could be put towards any infrastructure needs or any county budgetary needs. After the useful lifespan of the project, we're proposing to decommission the project with decommissioning plan to be provided at site plan approval. We're going to propose decommissioning security. And after decommissioning, we're going to return the project to a state that would allow other developments. As I mentioned, since we partner with First Solar, we just want to briefly talk about this technology. So it's American-made equipment designed to highest safety and quality standards. This technology is used widely by utilities, by U.S. government. Oceana's naval airspace uses this technology. And what is really important to us as we've partnered with First Solar is that they do offer a panel recycling program. Right now, as not many projects are getting decommissioned, they're solely focusing on recycling any damaged panels, anything during their production. We actually visited their facility that they're expanding as they're trying to prepare for the industry coming back with panels that are ready to be recycled from other projects. And their current recycling rates they're able to extract and recycle and reuse into other products 90% of their current panels. So here's just briefly how that compares to other industries. Again, they're very proud that they're able to reuse the semiconductor. They're able to reuse the glass for other industries. They're able to reuse the adhesive. They were introducing us to what other uses would the panels go to, and they currently have carpet lining, road paint with reflective glass beads in it. So it's a very robust recycling program that they've developed. And so with that, we just want to reiterate that the panels will not end up in landfills. We know there's a concern for many communities about what happens after the useful lifetime for the panels. So we just wanted to share the availability of this program with you. So thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
So thanks for that presentation. I appreciate the American-made and the partnering with the Chamber of Commerce to look at local labor. Could you go back to the slide where you showed the different road access to the site, please?
I'll do my best. Here?
Okay, so this one here, is that crisscross road? Is that the one at 9 minutes? Is this what you're proposing as possible access to the site?
Yes.
I don't think crisscross, I mean, just off the top of my head, I don't think crisscross road is a...
So this is not necessarily what we're proposing. This is just we're trying to see what is the quickest way if other use wanted to get to the site, just to kind of gauge what's the attractiveness of this location in its proximity to the interstate. So this is just for that purpose.
And then the last thing, Olivet is a Presbyterian church, not a Baptist church.
Thank you.
Could you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have one question. The hours of operation, is this pretty much consistent with the last application's hours of operation?
For construction?
Okay. The other thing is that the buffers that you're going to be using, do you have a selective choice of dense? Are you going to use dense buffering? So which would be evergreens?
Yes, that's right. We're going to use the fast-growing evergreens. We've usually been very successful with green giants, eastern red cedars, and wax myrtle. So we're trying to mix different species, not to create monoculture, and make sure that should there be any issues with specific diseases, then we're kind of protected by mixing different species together.
The state requirements, state mandates and things of that nature have gone through recent flux, particularly into categorizing which solar projects are not taxed by the local government. What is that threshold now, if it has changed? Is it at 20 still?
No, so thank you for that question. Since 2020, almost every year there were changes to the taxing protocols, and that became a very complex set of rules. Right now, to determine whether or not you're taxed, what exemption applies, it does depend on the size, who is the owner of the project, so is it a public utility or a private company, and when did the project apply for interconnection. So in our case, when we take these three together, so we don't fall under that full exemption category. But the MNT taxes are pretty low given the low MNT tax rate and the depreciation schedule from the county. So when we were showing the two different revenue streams, because I'm trying to go back. Because of the MNT tax rate and the depreciation schedule, for this project under MNT tax protocol, that will be only around $1 million. There's another tax avenue available to the county, the revenue share. It has to be adopted through an ordinance, but we are proposing a siding agreement to the Board of Supervisors. And what we're proposing in that siding agreement is that we were voluntarily, without the need for the county to pass anything, pay the greater of these revenues on an annual basis.
Mr. Hathaway, sorry to interrupt, but where is New Kent County in regards to adopting any kind of ordinance on revenue sharing?
Our board really has not had that conversation yet. I know our attorney has briefed the board on its options as we consider these types of applications, but we've not moved forward yet with adopting such an ordinance.
Would a siding agreement, I'm just thinking out loud here, a siding agreement that you're offering could include the provisions of a revenue sharing?
Yes.
And the board could still say, we don't want that, correct? Okay. Okay, that's it.
That's right. And the way that we're proposing it, if the board overall doesn't require or doesn't pass this ordinance across the county, we're still offering that it would just apply to us. Because of that differentiation of how big the project is, when did you apply, the county may see larger projects that would be more attractive under different mechanisms. So it's not always favorable to just pass this ordinance that would apply to all the projects.
I have just questions for staff, I guess. So it is zoned industrial, and confirming there are no utilities on site. So if someone were to develop the property, they'd have to bring in off-site utilities. I don't know, probably have to be by 106 or through the woods. So, and just as a general comment, then, other than solar farm, we have no industry that's obviously not in a ready state to move into a site like this. So I guess as a comment, it's suitability for a solar farm.
If I may go, I'm sorry.
It's not a technical question at all, but why is it, because we've heard a lot of applications for solar farms here and at our board as well. So why at 35 years do you just assume that it needs to be decommissioned? Why wouldn't you continue to use it for solar generation? I mean, it's just...
Mm-hmm. No, it's a great question.
You know what I'm saying? It just seems like, why change?
Sure. And different developers using different technologies and assumptions, their estimate 30 is anywhere between 30 to 45 years. Why we usually say 35 years is that's closely tied to how efficient the panels are. So every year the panels use 0.3% of their efficiency. So they're becoming less and less efficient. So by the time we get to the 35 years, that's just the assumption that it would need to be retooled. What would be the market at the time? It's just hard to predict.
I know the site plan hasn't been fully prepared, but I did see that there's projected to have 2 access points to the site for the facility. We do have, or adopted a standard that there's a 100% visual impairment of the panels from the roadway system. I would hope that these access points are not sight lines to view the access path, that they're more circuitous routes to, at least after the panels are up. That maybe they could be straight in during construction, but after the panels are up, there's circuitous routes.
I'm sure we're happy to work on that in the site plan process.
Anyone else?
One quick question, and I guess this is probably a question for you, Kelly. In one of the previous public hearings, we heard some comments on stormwater drainage off of the bigger project over near the jail. Are there any other provisions that should be looked at to try and avoid that situation, or was that just a very unique situation in general as far as the drainage patterns and what was constructed?
Yeah, kind of wish Josh was here to answer that. I might ask Justin if he has any details, and also Mr. Price, their engineer too, could probably speak to that. They will be required to follow every DEQ stormwater requirement that we have now. Did you want to speak on the engineering at all, or? Yeah.
And DEQ has recently released new guidelines. So since March, they've been updating that, and there's a work group. So these are being updated just to make sure there's enough data now, specifically in Virginia, that they're prepared to make these changes. And we've been involved in the process and working with DEQ. And that project will go through that.
If I may add, because I was somewhat involved and my spouse was somewhat involved in that when we were working for the county. At the time that the solar panels or the solar farm there at the jail was coming into focus, there was several discussions with the state, and the state identified that solar arrays, elevated solar arrays, were a no net increase in stormwater runoff. Thus, the need for stormwater management was minimized. Since that time, it has changed. So, so long they're keeping abreast of it, I wouldn't worry too much.
And I would add, the recycling information provided, I think that's great that you included that, because that has come up in every project, what happens at the end of the project. So I think that's good.
Other questions? All right, at this time, I will open the citizens' comment period. First up is Fred Shia.
Hello, everyone, and members of the Planning Commission. I'm sure you have our letter that pretty much explains what has been said all evening. But I'd like to stress to you about one point in particular. This particular portion of the property, SPF, by the way, I'm Fred Shia, manager of SPF. Sorry, forgot to announce that. But this portion of the property is across the Shimano Creek. For us to access this property anytime soon is a very difficult project. We'd have to get the Army Corps of Engineers, we'd have to get all kinds of approvals to even cross that waterway. And the $1 million that I mentioned in the letter is just to build the crossing, not to develop the land across the way, which you also have to put in roads, infrastructure, water, sewer, electrical. And it's not going to happen in a short period of time. We have a large parcel of land on the other side of the Shibano Creek, and it's taken us 10 years to get a development over there. And so to develop this part of the land will take an extraordinarily long period of time. Oliver Church Road is not the kind of a road that you want to put an industrial site on. So you'd have to cross Shimano Creek and go all the way back to 106 in order to develop this parcel. So this parcel is not going to be developed for a long period of time. So this use is good. By the time this project is completed, then there probably will be potential for developing this property. So I would stress to you that even though it's zoned industrial now, it's not going to happen for a long, long time. And if we can get the 600 acres or on the other side of Shimano Creek developed, that'll be awesome, but it took us 10 years to get 100 acres developed. So we're working, and we'd like to have it industrial. We'd like to have some big industrial come across on this 300 acres, but it would take a lot of development, a lot of Armored Corps of engineers, and just a lot. It's just not ready. It's going to take a long time. So I would endorse this project because I think it's the best use for the county, for us, and the electricity generated from this project may even service some of the industrial that we're developing. So it'll be good for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next name on the list, I need some help. Donna?
I'm sorry, I signed up. That's me. That's all right.
So at this time, I will close the citizens' comment period and close the public hearing for application CUP-05-22 Kaden Interjects New Kent LLC and turn it back over to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Any additional questions?
I have one
discussion?
question on the CUP. Is there an expiration date on the CUP?
Third anniversary.
The third?
The last provision 11.
So, Madam Chair, I couldn't help, as I looked at this, to remember the gentleman that came several months ago talking about Woodhaven Shores and the water, the issue they're having there with the lake, upstream development causing more runoff, and they're having problems looking to the county as a possible partner with that. And so that comes to mind when I see this so close to Shimano Creek, is what's downstream and what's the potential impact going to be? And does the stormwater provisions completely eliminate any concern for that?
Yes, I'm Howard Price with AES Consultant Engineers. Yes, based on the current regulations, what we have to do is we have to make sure that we contain any runoff that is generated by the site and do not release anything that is equal to or more than that. So we have to make it equal or less than the runoff that is generated by the site currently. So this, it's multiple ways that can be diversion dikes, ditches, usually a lot of basins, whether it be dry or wet. Mostly out here probably be dry basins, but it'll be a way to detain the water before it is released into the wetland area.
Madam Chair, just a comment. I think based on the suitability of this site for industrial, I think the solar farm is probably appropriate for this site. Obviously, the amount of expense to bring in off-site or to bring in utilities to support any other type of industrial use is just not existent or in the foreseeable future, unless I'm corrected by staff. But I don't think that's on the horizon.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Ms. Townsend?
I'll entertain a motion if you'd like.
Hearing no other comments, please.
In order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, general welfare, and good zoning practices of the county, I move to adopt the resolution PC 2022 to forward application CUP 0522 to New Kent County Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. I further move that the Planning Commission finds that this project to be in substantial accordance with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend. You have roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. To adopt the resolution number PC 20-22 and to forward CUP 05-22 to the New Kent Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Ms. Thomas? Mr. La Rochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
And Ms. Rose?
Aye.
And it passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We now have several AFD applications, hearings, so I will turn it back over to the public hearing chair.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing for application AFD-01-22, addition to Lower Chickahominy Agricultural and Forestal District.
Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission, I present to you Resolution PC 12-22, which is an application AFD 0122 in addition to the Lower Chickahominy Agricultural and Forestal District. The applicant is Terry and Robbie Lindsay, and they've requested to add approximately 24.46 acres to the district. They intend to preserve the streamside management zone that runs through the property and possibly manage mature pines within the parcel through a forestry management program. The district currently consists of 8 parcels totaling 723 acres, more or less, and does not expire until 2028. The applicants have a 24.46 acre parcel. Of that, most of that is devoted to wetlands, and the comprehensive plan designates that under conservation currently. The public assessment for the 2022 current assessment is noted in the staff report, zoned to A1, and future land use designation is conservation. The application and supporting documents is in your packet, along with the AFD Advisory Committee recommendation. They did forward a favorable recommendation to you at their May 19th meeting. And there is also a mailing of notices that was required by law to go to the adjacent property owners. Staff has not received any comment from any adjacent property owners regarding this application. There's also a Lower Chickahominy Forest District map in your packet, along with your PC resolution 1222 at the very end. Just want to note about 3/4 of the way through is your forestry report from Senior Area Forester Jeremy Faulkner, who recommends the pine management there on that parcel. And if you look at his breakdown of the land use plan, he's indicated several different parcels that the Lindsays have. Right now, they currently have a couple other parcels in the AFD program. They'll be adding this along with those parcels that are adjoining to it. And then the brother to Robbie is Christopher Lindsay, and that will be under consideration for your review under application 0222, which is 2 other parcels in the name of Lindsay Arboretum and Game Preserve. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to go over anything in the packet that you have questions on. But basically, this is viable forest land and wetland that needs to be protected. In the goal to preserve forestry and agriculture and stream sides within the county. Staff recommends approval.
questions?
Ms. Adams, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Ms. Adams, there's no notation as to any agricultural or forestal products from this property, correct?
No, if you please, Madam Chairwoman and Mr. Bennett, you can also consider other factors with adding these parcels to the AFD program, considering that the Lindsays do have 2 other adjoining properties that they'd like to add with this. And there is also viable pine that's on the parcel.
Which I see by the recommendation of the forestry, it says leave it, so be no harvesting there.
Right.
On that parcel.
Right.
And the next question is this area being denoted an RPA, 90% of it is about an RPA, I believe. There is also a reduced tax rate on RPA property that's already instituted for all properties within the county, correct?
Right. The Commissioner of Revenue, under her taxation methods, they have a set rate for agricultural, forestal, wetland. Then they disqualify anything that has a home site. So wetlands do have a land use taxation rate that's applied to that. It's usually less than forested or agricultural. But it is applied under the land use program as reduced taxation.
So
they get credit for preserving the wetland as well under the AFD program.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Well, in that case, I will open the citizens' comment portion of the public hearing, and no one has signed up, so I will close it. And then I will close the public hearing for application AFD-01-22, addition to Lower Chickahominy Agricultural and Forestal District, and turn it back over to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Are there any further questions or considerations? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Just for disclosure, I'm related to the applicant, so
Okay.
I'll be abstaining.
So you're recusing yourself? Okay. So noted.
Madam President, in order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, and general welfare and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt Resolution PC-12-22 to forward application AFD-0122 to the New Kent County Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Schmidt. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. To adopt PC-12-22 and forward AFD-01-22 to the Board of Supervisors for a favorable recommendation. Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. LaRochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Abstain.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Thomas? Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Rose?
Aye.
Passed.
Thank you. Turn it back over to Ms. Butler for the next AFD hearing.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing for AFD-02-22, additions to Lower Chickahominy AFD.
Yes, AFD application 0222 are also additions to the Lower Chickahominy District. The applicants are the Lindsay Arboretum and Game Preserve. They have 2 tax map parcels adjacent to the ones we looked at in application number 1, and they are parcel 4368 and 4369. They're owned by the LLC. They both have 40 acres each for a total of 80 acres. And the applicant is converting the agricultural grasslands to pine forest and has planted short leaf and white pines on the parcel. The AFD Advisory Committee voted 7-0 to forward a favorable recommendation. and maps and applications are provided. This also is in conservation, future land use, and in the back of your packet, along with the forestry report that was provided by Mr. Faulkner, there are some receipts from their purchase of the plantings that they planted. And you've also got some maps of the fields that they have converted from grassland. That's where they planted the pines. The receipts are they're from Pine View Forestry LLC, and they've planted 22 acres on one parcel and 37 acres of shortleaf and white pines on the other parcel. So they've planted basically 55 some acres of pine saplings on these 80 acres. And staff offers a favorable recommendation for these two parcels as well, and the name of the LLC. That's why it was provided as a separate application under a separate ownership. You can consider this under Resolution PC 13-22, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions? Well, then I can open the citizens' comment period and close it because no one signed up. And then I will close the public hearing for application AFD-02-22, additions to Lower Chickahominy AFD, and turn it back over to you, Madam Chairwoman.
We gotta get her more work to do.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Are there any additional questions, comments on?
Same disclosure related.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Gotta give him more work to do.
I was getting ready to say the same thing.
Well, he's related. How many people in the county are you related to?
Lots. Yeah, hundreds.
Yeah.
We're an old family.
Is there any other discussion, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. In order to address, wait a minute, let me make sure I have the right one. In order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, general welfare, and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt Resolution PC-13-22 to forward application AFD-02-22 to the New Kent County Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. You have a roll call, please.
All right, to adopt PC-13-22 and to forward AFD-02-22 to the New Kent Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. LaRochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Abstain.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Ms. Thomas? Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Rose?
Aye.
And it passed.
Thank you. Ms. Butler, I guess we'll just keep on trucking.
Okay. At this time, I will open the public hearing for AFD-03-22, additions to York River AFD.
Yes, Madam Chair, application 0322 is an additions to the York River AFD district. The York River district is located in the far northeastern corner of the county. James City County borders it to the east and the York River is to the south. These parcels are accessed by State Route 600 off of Holly Fork Road along the Bent Tree Estates. The applicant, Randolph A. Coleman Jr., has applied to add approximately 48.27 acres to the district. He has currently got a farm lease agreement with Mr. Albert Dean to farm tilled crops of corn, soybeans, and wheat. The parcels have also been farmed by Mr. Vin Davis in the past. That name sounds familiar to you, Mr. Vin Davis. The district consists of 53 parcels totaling approximately a little more than 2,800 acres and is not set to expire until 2031. We just recently renewed that during the pandemic. Your meeting packet has photos of the property, the soil report, the cooperative extension agent. I'd like to make a shout out to him. Mr. Forrest Hobbs is our new cooperative extension agent that's gone out in the field to document the field crops for us. And so I appreciate his work and effort to support our AFD people in looking at these parcels. And you can consider the resolution PC 1422. Both staff and the AFD Advisory Committee offered to forward a favorable recommendation of these 3 parcels. And briefly, let me just look at the forestry report with you. So just going back, Mr. Forrest Hobbs of the Virginia Cooperative Extension, he did go out and make observations in the fields with pictures indicating soybean production occurring. And the current Mr. Dean is rotating crops of soybeans and corn. He indicated the property had transitioned and been subdivided in the last several years, but it is being tilled cropped. And most of that's agricultural there. The photos that are in the packet from Mr. Hobbs, if you look at the one that says Coleman on 21422, he's got the 13 acres of the tilled crop in front of you. I think if you turn the page, he's got pictures of the location, address, and the mailbox, but I think he's taking that photo from, okay, number 6. Photo number 6, you can see Holly Fork Road out there. So that's right off Holly Fork.
Corrections, actually, I'll write 601.
Number 7, I'm sorry, number 7 is off. Holly Fork is behind the camera in photo number 7. Is that right, Mr. Davis? Trying to interpret this here, yeah. So you kind of get an idea of where the property is located. But with it being 3 parcels, the 3 parcels standing alone had questionable minimum acreages, but since how he's applied for all 3 parcels together in contiguous ownership name, they do qualify with the minimum acreage for the agriculture. We'll look at tax map 47-3-5 is, he's reported 13 acres of tilled crop on that one. And on the adjacent one, 47-3-6, he's got approximately 5.31 acres of tilled crop. There's a little bit of wetland and timber there, not enough to qualify under forestry, but certainly under agricultural with the parcels together. And then on the last parcel, 47-3-7, he's reported 2 acres of tilled crop, 10 acres of wetlands, and 6 acres of timber. So we've estimated that he has met the 5-acre minimum for tilled crop to qualify for ag with all 3 parcels together.
And I can attest to his farm. I go by there every day. So.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, he's a former colleague and a friend. I do know him as well, but not related.
Questions?
Yeah,
Ms. Woods, I noticed on the GIS system that parcel 47-3-6 is the icon of a building permit being issued, but there's no structure. And the other thing, the other question is, when was Bent Tree Estates created as a subdivision?
So if we look at the Commissioner of Revenue's vision data under 47-3-6, when I ran this report on 2/15, I think was when I took the application in. Oh yeah, I did run it on February 15th, 2022. It's on my header. You can see that the Commissioner of Revenue had not reported any building permits being issued at that time. She has the listed as vacant land. So even if he does build a house there, that would not prevent him from having the qualified acreages. Basically what would happen is if he builds a house there on that property, then the Commissioner of Revenue would deduct 1 acre for a home site. He would still have, you know, if he put it in the tilled crop area of the 5.31 acres, that would knock that down to 4.31 acres on that parcel, in addition to the acreages for the other 2 parcels. He would still qualify with a minimum ag of 5 acres and 1 unqualified acre for a home site if he decides to build a house there.
And other than the cropland, I have, and using again the GIS, I haven't seen any visual forestry harvesting in the last 20 years on that site.
Right, and as I stated earlier, it didn't look like he met the 20-acre minimum there for timber. He's just noting how the land is currently being used now. So on this parcel 47-3-6, he's listed that there's 8 timber acres there. If we look at we go and look at 47-3-5. He's only got 2 acres, so you're looking at 10 total. And then on 47-3-7, he has another 6 acres, so he's like 16 acres of timber being reported. He's not trying to add the timber, he's trying to add the agriculture. Minimum stocking for forestry is 20 acres. He will not get any credit for the timbered acres because it does not meet the 20-acre minimum stocking requirement. But he will get credit under the AFD program and under the reduced tax use for the ag meeting, the 5-acre minimum for the agricultural tilled crop production.
Which is mainly located on 1 parcel.
I can go over the acreages again.
Now, I understand. I mean, it's like 14, 3, and 2 or something of that nature.
Yeah, so on tax map 47-3-5, it's the 13 acres there is the biggest tilled crop piece. On 47-3-6, there was 5 acres, maybe take away 1 for a house. And then the 47-3-7 was 2 acres of tilled crop. So yes, the biggest parcel that has the most agricultural production is the 47-3.
Is Bentry a state?
47-3-5.
The Bentry Estates, I guess, was a large lot subdivision created back in 2010 or something like that.
Many years ago.
Before that?
It's probably been 10 years. It's not all that long ago. It's
Around
was
2010, Mr. Hazelwood.
Yeah, Jerry Hazelwood owned the property.
Mm-hmm.
It was a larger farm at one time. And it's probably, 8 total lots in that?
Yeah,
Probably.
I think it has 2 little cul-de-sacs of maybe 4 or 5 lots on each cul-de-sac.
And so what's the minimum acreage required if he had one standalone property? What's the minimum?
So the minimum acreage per parcel, they would have to meet a 5-acre minimum on agricultural production and a 20-acre minimum on forestry production.
So in essence, a 5-acre lot, and that without a home site, so a 6-acre lot with a home site would be the minimum size for standalone.
For agricultural production, yes. The minimum is 5 acres.
And if he's applying to put all 3 parcels in at one time, if he wants to pull, can he pull 1 parcel out if he decides to sell one of these parcels? Or does he have to pull?
That would be his
withdrawals?
prerogative, but he would have to still meet the minimum stocking requirements. If he did that and he no longer met the minimum, then he would not qualify for land use taxation.
Okay. For example, if he pulled the front lot with the majority of 13 or 15 acres of under till,
then he doesn't qualify.
Yeah, then he wouldn't. The other 2 lots would not qualify at that point.
Right. Any lot that does not have a minimum of 5 acres ag would not qualify by itself.
And the tax benefit is only applied to the acreage that is under the AFD or the acreage under till or unbeaten farmed, not
Right.
the entire acreage of the parcel.
Right.
Okay.
The Commissioner of Revenue will not give him reduced land use taxation on the timber because it does not meet the 20-acre minimum. He would only get qualified for the tilled acreage.
So I'm absolutely correct. The only reason for all three inclusive properties is to meet the minimum acreage for application.
He wanted all three to be applied for because they're all being farmed by Albert Dean as one farm tract.
Let me ask you a different question, different way.
Okay.
It's okay. Would one parcel of those three meet the requirements? Let's say the first parcel that is currently being tilled and cropped.
Mm-hmm.
Would that meet the requirement for the AFD program?
So tax map 47, I'm gonna get my numbers back in front of me, sorry.
47-5.
Yeah, 47-3-5 by itself, yes, it would qualify. It has 13 acres of tilled crop. The minimum is 5. We could look at 3-6. So 47-3-6, right next to it, has 5.31 acres of tilled crop, so that by itself would qualify. And 47-3-7 is only 2 acres of tilled crop and 6 acres of timber, 10 acres of wetland. So that one I would leave up to the Commissioner of Revenue's discretion because it has 10 acres of wetland there and 6 acres of timber. I would say maybe it would not qualify on its own. But these are adjoining parcels in contiguous ownership. So all three of them together do qualify as a package.
And he's only getting tax relief on those qualifying acres.
Right,
Yeah.
under the current tax law with the Commissioner of Revenue. Right. The code lets you qualify under contiguous ownership if your parcels are all adjoining.
But
So
Part
if
of
you sell the middle parcel,
I know, I'm being difficult tonight, and please bear with me.
I can't speculate on what the owner
I
may
know.
do in the future, but
Well-
he knows what the rules are, and he knows if he does come out, he would be subject to rollback tax.
yeah, exactly. So there, whatever he decides to do, all those parcels are going to be equally affected or unaffected if he tries to sell off one of the lots, right?
And couple that with part of the AFD program is that they do get a tax rate, reduced tax rate that's being offset by the sale of crops or goods from that's generated on the property. So if minimal amounts of crops or goods are being generated on property, that doesn't overshadow the amount of tax they're being relieved from, then why put it in the AFD?
Did you want me to answer that question? Oh. Because our current code currently states a minimum of 5 acres. If we want to entertain a motion to our Board of Supervisors to raise that amount from 5 acres to a greater amount, that might answer your question if they want to do it to a larger tract of land than just 5 acres. But again, this is mandated to us by the state. Our code reflects the state code. So we would have to contact our legislators and say, hey, we want to raise the minimum agricultural acreage from 5 acres to 10 or whatever.
But that's a discussion for another day.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, I will open the citizens' comment portion, and I will close the citizens' comment portion because no one signed up. Then I will close the public hearing for AFD-03-22, additions to York River AFD, and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. If there are no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chairwoman, in order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, general welfare, and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt resolution number PC-14-22 to forward application AFD-03-22 to the New Kent County Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. May I have a roll call, please?
I think it was 03. Did you say 04? Okay.
Right, application
Just
03.
confirming. Okay. All right. To adopt PC 14-22 and to forward AFD-03-22 to the New Kent Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. LaRochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Going to be in the minority? No.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Ms. Thomas? Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Rose?
Aye.
And it passed.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next hearing. Ms. Butler?
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing for AFD-04-22, addition to Pelham Swamp AFD.
Madam Chairman and Commissioners, this is a reapplication by Kendall H. Hatley, who's applied to add the tax map parcel number 22-30, which consists of 122.74 acres in the Pelham Swamp District. Her application was previously denied. If you recall, this was part of the old polo field that the Farms of New Kent was going to develop, and then they changed their development plans and decided to sell the land back to Kendall Hatley and her mom, Margie Harrison. So they have been working to, the Farms of New Kent have been working to reestablish the soils there. Much of the progress has been made, and Ms. Hatley's been working with Mr. Eric Randolph to amend the soils through the double planting of cover crops of soybeans and pasture grasses for the livestock. Minimal erosion and sediment control measures remain on site. After checking with the environmental department, they should be resolved shortly. There's a few silt fences that are still there on the property, and there's a sediment basin that they're going to go back and fill in. So they're working on amending all that too. But we do have cover crop growing currently of soybeans. So I've recommended to Ms. Kendall Hatley that she go ahead and reapply this year. She got held up a little bit, probably to her benefit with the COVID, to have time for some of these implementations to be corrected by Farms of New Kent and converting the property over. They've deeded the land back over to her and got all the legal paperwork and everything done. So it is currently zoned A1. The future land use is rural lands. And she's devoted approximately 61 acres to pasture and agricultural production. There's also about 60 acres of land devoted to timber on the property. There's also a primary dwelling with a horse stable and some sheds on the property. So 1 acre of home site would be unqualified. Staff and the AFD Advisory Committee both recommended approval of this, and you can consider this under PC Resolution PC 1522. And in your packet is her application, as well as the soil report, the maps, and got some photos from Mr. Forrest Hobbs again go out and took some photos of what Mr. Eric Randolph has been planting in the fields. And then she's got forestry. Let's see if we got one. She's working with a certified forester, Jeff Grant, with Charles City Timber and Mat. And she's got some other parcels that touch this too. So it's not all 300 acres there on this one piece, but adjoining properties. But she does have a good stock of some hardwoods there that he is going to help her manage. Right now they're trying to do some clear cutting with some selective cut. After Isabel was done, they cut some things, but they've got some heavy pine timber there. She's got some stands there that will be left to grow, and she'll be working with the forester on managing that timber track in the future.
Questions? I have one. Since this was a polo field and being converted over to agriculture, is there any length of time that you have to farm something before it can be considered agricultural?
No. Yeah, the farms in New Kent went in there and just kind of restored what they had butted up for preparing to install a polo field. But basically the crops are growing, as you can see in the photos. She's got pasture grass and she's got a double row of soybeans growing there. So just what is going to dictate the agricultural production is getting these beans back in the soil to add nutrients back to the soil to produce viable crops. And Eric Randolph, he's one of the expert farmers in our area. He works with a lot of our agricultural people. And so he knows just what to plant to try to put some of them nutrients back in the soil that have been disturbed by the farms in New Kent. And I think with the double row planting of the soybeans is going to add some nitrogen back to that soil and get that soil back to farming condition.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say that this was originally within the AFD prior to the Farms of New Kent?
Yes, before the Farms of New Kent, she did have this in the AFD program. Yeah, for many years. Their family has had this property. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Mr. Tiller?
Ms. Wood, so there's not a 3-year minimum time to get into the program, to have been farming, to show that you're, for some reason I thought there was something in our code that said you had to show for 3 years.
No, we have something on our family subdivision ordinance that says you have to own property for 3 years, but nothing in our AFD code. Mm-hmm.
If there are no questions, I will open the citizens' comment period, and I will close the citizens' comment period because we don't have anyone signed up. And then I will close the public hearing for AFD-04-22, addition to Pelham Swamp AFD. And I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. There are no other comments or questions. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. In order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, general welfare, and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt resolution PC 1522 to forward application AFD 0422 to the New Kent County Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. You have a roll call.
To adopt PC-15-22 and to forward AFD-04-22 to the Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. La Rochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Ms. Thomas? Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Rose?
Aye.
It passed. You're welcome.
Moving on. Ms. Butler?
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing for AFD-05-22, withdrawal from York River AFD.
Yeah, get ready.
I was about to say.
Get ready, Mr. Davis, go turn his mic on. Yeah, the applicant is Mr. Lloyd, Chris Davis. He has submitted applications to withdraw 3 inherited parcels of land located at and adjoining at 5600 Farmers Drive in Barhamsville, which are all in the York River Agricultural and Forestry District. The public hearing application includes tax map parcels 38-17, 18, and 19, which combined total 57.58 acres. The parcels were all previously owned by his late brother, Mr. Lawrence Larry Davis, whose date of passing was February 2nd of 2021. And the applicant inherited the parcels by legally recorded deed on May 18th of 2021. The York River AFD district currently consists of 53 parcels. It is not set to expire until 2031. The descendant landowner does not wish to keep his inheritance since he's been a well-established resident of the state of Kansas for the past 50 years. He and his wife wish to remove the parcels from the AFD program. And it's important to note that pursuant to our County Code 62-44E, discussed later, our code allows for people who inherit properties to withdraw without penalty within 2 years. And this is within the 2-year time frame from the brother's passing to the time they inherited the property, okay? Tax map parcel 17's got 20 acres. Tax map parcel 18 has got 25 acres, and tax map parcel 38-19 is approximately 12.58 acres. So that's where we come up with the 57 acres. The AFD Advisory Committee considered that portion of the code to allow for, upon the death of a property, I'll just read the code to you. Basically, it states, upon the death of a property owner, any heir at law, as a matter of right, be entitled to withdraw such land from such a district upon inheritance within 2 years of the date of the death of the owner. And so the AFD Advisory Committee and I both recommend approval, and you can consider this under PC 1622.
Questions? Well, if there are no questions, I will open the citizens' comment period, and I will close the citizens' comment period because no one signed up. And I will close the public hearing for AFD-05-22, withdrawal from York River AFD, and turn it back over to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. If there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce.
In order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, general welfare, and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt Resolution PC-16-22 to forward application AFD-05-22 to the New Kent County Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation for withdrawal.
Thank you. May I have a roll call?
To adopt PC-16-22 and to forward AFD-05-22 to the New Kent Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. LaRochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Abstain.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Ms. Thomas? Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Rose?
Aye.
Passed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll turn it back over to Ms. Butler.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing for AFD-06-22, addition to Putney Creek AFD.
Yes, the applicants Kimberly Smith and John William McLean have applied to add tax map parcel 2-44. It's approximately 53.55 acres to the Putney Creek AFD. That district, special use district, has approximately 28 parcels in it with 3,100 acres, and it is in effect until 2025. The applicants wish to preserve this land in its natural state to enjoy it for recreation, hunting, and timber income. The landowners purchased this parcel in 2018 and built a home on it in 2019. Right now, they've applied with the forestry timber acreage being approximately 41 acres that would qualify. And they've submitted a soil report and a forestry report. Let's see who the forester is. So they're working with Bill Ray of Ray Forestry Consulting. Area E in the forestry report is the one that we're looking at in particular with the 17 acres of it. Mr. Ray noted that that area contains 60 to 65-year-old hardwoods, mostly of white oak. He advised of doing a select cut in the next 5 years and advised cutting between 25 to 33% of the timber. That's 18 inches and over. So he's shared some good forestry management techniques with us in his reporting. He said some of the trees do need to be thinned because of the rotting. And there's some other acreages there listed in his report. There's a 1 acre pond. There's a 5 acre area on the map that he's indicated as Area F that has some 4 acres of pasture there. He's trying to leave that undisturbed. But we recommended approval, and so did the AFD Advisory Committee. You can consider sending a favorable recommendation to the board by adopting PC Resolution 1722.
Thank you. Questions? Well, I will open the citizens' comment portion, and I will close the citizens' comment portion because no one signed up. And then I will close the public hearing for AFD-06-22, addition to Putney Creek AFD. Turn it back over to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, if you're open to a motion, I move that in order to protect it.
That's Mr. Bennett.
In order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, and general welfare and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt Resolution PC 1722 to forward application AFD 0622 to New Kent County Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. You have a roll call?
To adopt PC-17-22 and to forward AFD-06-22 to the New Kent Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. La Rochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Ms. Thomas? Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Rose?
Aye.
Passed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the last hearing of the evening, I'll turn it back over to you, Ms. Butler.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing for AFD-07-22, withdrawal from Black Creek AFD.
Yes, so Mr. William C. Pearson Jr. has applied to withdraw tax map parcel 10-47, which is approximately 170 acres from the Black Creek AFD district. Mr. Pearson has indicated to staff and to staff members that he has to sell a portion of this parcel due to some life circumstances, which he did not divulge to us. He is aware that there may be rollback tax ramifications by withdrawing this prematurely before the district expires in 2027. He's been in the AFD program for a while, so he will more than likely pay between $18,000 and $20,000 in rollback tax by taking this out. Right now, there's about 64 acres of marsh and wetland, 98 acres of timber, 5 acres or so of devoted to agricultural, and there are one primary dwelling and one shed structure on the property with private well and septic. The Commissioner of Revenue has 2 acres unqualified at this time. Based on the limited knowledge, staff and the AFD Advisory Committee recommended favorable approval for the withdrawal for the reasonable cause that Mr. Pearson presented. And you can send a favorable recommendation to the board by considering PC 18-22.
And I'd just like to say I'm not related to this person.
Not related, okay.
Other questions? All right, then I will open the citizens' comment portion, and I will close the citizens' comment portion because no one signed up. And then I will close the public hearing for AFD-07-22, withdrawal from Black Creek AFD. And I will turn it back over to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. If there are no comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion. In order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, general welfare, and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt Resolution PC-18-22 to forward application AFD-07-22 to the New Kent Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation for withdrawal.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. You have a roll call?
To adopt PC-18-22 and to forward AFD-07-22 to the Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation. Dr. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Abstain.
Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. LaRochelle?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Townsend?
Aye.
Ms. Thomas? Mr. Moyer?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Rose?
Aye.
Passed.
Thank you. All right. Now, as far as I recall, there is no new business. So, move on to the chairman's report, and I really have nothing to report as of now. I would ask, I guess, a question of Mr. Hathaway as far as the status of the steering committee for the comp plan.
Actually, excuse me, Ms. Leduc might be the better person to answer this.
Okay.
I did receive a public engagement plan today, which has a very aggressive schedule with meetings starting, I believe, in the next 2 weeks. So I'll be reviewing that today, and I believe that's with the steering committee. Yes.
Me? But is he the
alternate? Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I have certain circumstances where I'm not sure I'm going to be available as much. So I'd like to have Mr. Bennett listed as the representative rather than me.
Okay.
I would like to get the notices of all the meetings, and I'll try and attend as many as I can, just for reference sake. But I think it'll be more efficient for him to be listed as the active participant on the steering committee.
Sure. We'll forward that to the board so that they can make the appointment.
I'm sorry, what was the approval by the board?
The approval by the board.
Ms. Rose, and then the alternate was Mr. Davis?
No, it was Ms.
Bennett.
Rose and Mr. Davis.
Oh, okay,
And
joint.
the alternate was
Sure,
Mr.
okay.
Bennett.
Thank you.
So I will be reviewing the citizen engagement plan in the morning and following up with EPR, and then we'll be setting up our first meeting shortly after. So.
I'm curious as to how you're going to get the notices out that quickly in order to have meetings that soon, but
That was one of my concerns when I first saw the plan. We might need to push that back a week, just so we can get that on everybody's schedule. But and I'll, as soon as we finalize the citizen engagement plan too, I'll send the plan out to all the planning commissioners as well.
thank you. I guess we'll move on. The plan RBA.
There was no June meeting, but there was a joint meeting that I was not able to go to. Did anybody else go to it? No. Sorry.
And do any of the commissioners have anything of note, anything they'd like to report?
I think it was really smart to plan this meeting on the longest day of the year.
It just got dark outside.
Very good point, Michelle. I hadn't even thought about that. We'll move on to staff reports.
I am happy to announce that hopefully we'll be able to cancel July's meeting. Y'all have been busting your butts the past couple of months, so I thought we might be getting one application in for a CUP today, but they didn't meet the deadline. So unless Liberty Landing pulls a miracle out of their hat and they're ready for July, we're going to take July off.
That's fine, mine's still here.
What's that?
Mine's still here.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll probably start the comp plan meetings instead, so.
Okay.
That's all I had. Did anyone else staff reports? Did you have? Yes.
Oh.
Sherry's got a brief report first, and then, yeah, if you want to leave the binders, we'll recycle them.
Kelly, real quick, I know when we were talking before the meeting started, I know there's at least 2 people that cannot make the July meeting anyways. Are there any others that know they will not be able to attend a July meeting if we had to have one? Okay. I just.
Amy might get a free pass.
It was us.
No, I mean, it works out well.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes, Madam Chair, in my monthly report spreadsheet that I gave you, I realized a mistake that I had made on that. Oh, bad me. Down the left-hand column of in review, I put the numbers there to tell me what order the applications came in by, and I accidentally counted those as the number of applications in review. So the number of applications in review is not 45, it's actually 35. So I just wanted to clarify that in the reporting that I provided you, and I do apologize for the error. Did anyone have any questions about the reports?
I just had one really quick question. I saw there's a preliminary cluster subdivision application, Pomeroy Park.
It did come in from the Gooden Estate people. They're gonna name it Pomeroy Park. And they are perfectly aware of the fact that the board may or may not take action on the cluster subdivision ordinance at their July 11th meeting. Their application came in for a 60-day plan review. They will not probably get plan comments back until August 5th, so they are aware of the situation.
Okay.
So they may or may not be vetted, depending on what the board does.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from any of the commissioners?
Just to thank staff for that extra work for the cluster research. So I know that was a bit added to your plate, so thank you.
All right, we have come to the end of the agenda. So unless we hear otherwise from Kelly, sounds like there will not be a July 18th meeting. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
I just, when would they have to advertise that in order to have the meeting? Like, what's the deadline? Is it 15?
I always look, I count backwards from my calendar.
It would be, what is it, July
Soon,
3rd?
Then.
Somewhere around July 1st, yeah.
Yeah. Especially not with the holiday.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Adjourn at 9:08.
Did you make it to classes? How's it going? Okay, I'm sorry. Did you do the first 2 days and then go back to July? Did you do a little virtual stuff?
No, it's in person. It's the first one.